Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Broaden the scope of exposure for your business by going beyond the interview. Learn more at www.jmmbmediallc.com or email us at jmmbradio@gmail.com. The quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but on how we respond to them. Thomas Crum. Kimberly Best, RNMA, is a Tennessee Rule 31 listed civil mediator and Tennessee Rule 31 Trained Family Mediator. Kim's practice focuses on family mediation, health and elder care mediation, civil and business mediation, and conflict coaching. She is passionate about helping others resolve conflicts in a productive, non-litigious way using mediation, facilitation, and collaborative problem solving in order to find optimal solutions for all parties. She is here to tell us about her work and about her book, How to Live Forever, A Guide to Writing the Final Chapter of Your Life. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. It's
Kim or Kimberly?
Oh, Kim is fine. Kim is fine. You can find me by Kimberly, but I go by Kim.
Oh, okay, perfect. Wow. Thank you so much for gracing our platform, because in today's world, that's all we see every day is conflict. Nobody can agree on nothing.
Well, I'd love to say it's not true, but it is.
So, in your work, just give us a little bit of the strategies that you use to try to bring people in a more harmonious, okay, let's go with this kind of thing attitude.
Yeah. So I think it's hard for a number of reasons. The number one for me being we haven't learned how to do conflict. Well, first of all, I want to say that conflict is normal. And for a lot of people, that's not the case. If there's conflict and we disagree, well, sometimes when I present on conflict, people are like, can you change the name of your title of the presentation? Because if you use the word conflict, people aren't going to like that. So I call it the C word now, because we can't even say the word to talk about the fact that we have conflict. But even in a religious setting, sometimes it's a sin to disagree or have conflict, when in fact, conflict is a sign that there's a problem to solve, or that we have inadvertently stepped on each other's toes. Mm-hmm. And when we're in relationship with someone, we are going to step on each other's toes. It doesn't mean someone's a bad person. So learning tools to have conversations better, to see what we're doing, is part of my passion in teaching about conflict, and then using mediation as a way to hold a safe space for people to have that conflict. Because I like to say I'm really, really good at my job, and I'm not bragging, I just am, unless it's my own conflict. Yeah, because when it's us in it, it's really hard to be objective. It's really hard to, slow down to listen and not jump to conclusions or build a story in our head and all the things that make us go silent.
You are so needed. What made you want to do this kind of work?
Oh, that's just a great question. So I was a registered nurse for a very, very long time. I worked in every intensive care unit there is. I worked in trauma and ultimately the emergency department. And, talk about conflict, but there's a lot going on with that. I took a break from that to homeschool 2 of my 5 kids. And I went back to school in the process of doing the nursing, because it was just, it's hard to see people suffer as much as we see them suffer, So I went back to graduate school in psychology. Well, I realized psychology, and I apologize to all the counselors and psychologists, but the whole process for me is a little like watching paint dry. Like nothing happens. And I have the heart of an ER nurse. So I went back into nursing. And then my 20-year marriage fell apart. Well, it was falling apart for a long time. I mean, I knew that, but it had its serious fall apart. And I went through a really bad divorce. And my brother, who was an educator, said, you know, there's this thing called mediation. And this place called Hofstra in New York, who teaches a form of mediation called transformative mediation, you know, and it focuses on having difficult conversations without beating each other to death. So I went to Hofstra and I was fascinated. And I thought, you know, we could do this so much better if we just knew how. I mean, there are steps we can take. There's a road to follow. It goes against our natures, so we have to learn it, but it's not that hard. So I went back to graduate school at the age of 50 in conflict management and got my master's degree in that.
Wow, I am so impressed. And you have the demeanor for it.
You know, that's interesting, Ida, because we don't want people to feel because we're not comfortable with their feelings. But if we can get comfortable with letting people feel without absorbing it, you know, just separating us from them and letting them have that without feeling like we have to fix it, control it, minimize it, maximize it, just let people be and watch that, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to say about that whole anger thing, it is hard for people to show up and know what to do and not get intimidated by anger. Like anger, we just don't relate well to. Right. But John Gottman, who is probably the most renowned family therapist in the country, has something called the anger iceberg. And he says anger is just this big, broad brushstroke word over a lot of things that are really the anger. So loneliness, your feelings being hurt, sadness, feeling isolated, feeling left out, you know, rejection. We can relate to those things as human beings. Like we can have empathy. We can sit with people. Oh, I get it. I get it. You're feeling left out. You know, I get it. You're feeling insulted. I mean, whatever these things hurt, you know, disappointed, those things we can sit with instead of just the anger. So if we look underneath that iceberg, try to find what those things are, you know, the person who is angry needs to try to find what those things are. Then knowing those is the path to the next step.
And that makes so much sense. And one of the things you did say, we're not taught how to deal with conflict, or we mimic what we have seen through our childhood of how our parents dealt with conflict. And then we either bring that into our space or we either try to fix that generational curse and try to do something different. But we still struggle with doing something different.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. How do you know what to do different if you don't have a clue what that even looks like?
Right.
You know? And I say to people, like, how were you treated in your family of origin when you were the source of conflict? And how does that affect how you do conflict today? Now, for a little story on that, is I was talking to an educator recently, a superintendent of a whole school system. And she was talking about bringing restorative practices into her school. And she said a lot of the teachers, and certainly there would be parents too, no, you need to double down on toughness and getting rid of the kids who are a problem. And yeah, that's not working out so well, right? Like it's just not. No. But that's what we're teaching adults to be like. Oh, you can't figure it out. And I have a 5-year-old grandson, and the little guy's precocious, but he's smart as a whip. I mean, he's just so smart. He's a little bit of a stinker. He's been to the principal's office probably 6 times. He's 5. And they said he doesn't have impulse control. You're right. He's 5. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it is not natural to sit kids in a desk for 6 or 7 hours a day. That's not meant to be. I think looking at the potential of having a different way and realizing that everything we do with our children sets the path for how they're going to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And do you want to raise adults who are afraid of people that they might physically hurt them because that might result in aggression or all kinds of things can happen from that, right? Or do you want to raise adults who can run the country for us, when we're senior citizens? So, and what are we doing to get there? And we don't talk about that, we just keep the same things going and double down on the things that don't work.
Yeah, we use what we were taught as a platform for dealing with everything. And it's very hard for us to change because we don't know a different way, which is where your work comes in, because you're cutting a path that says, okay, and Lord knows we have seen lots of anger in its many forms shown in the media around the world, whether it's out and out war or just a local something happening in someone's community. So when we see all of these examples of how to act, who is there to say, what, there really is a different way? Because no one's offering that. So how do we set up a platform to be more or less demonstrated in a larger way?
Well, personally, I try to get on as many podcasts as possible. So.
Okay.
So thank you for having me. To offer another option. And second of all, there are so many people who are working so hard to bridge those gaps. We have people advocating for different things, and we have people. So if I advocate, if I'm for something, that means I'm often against something else, which is how we're doing conflict in a bigger picture. And you were graceful enough to say people with bad behavior. But what we commonly do is say bad people, right? So we make an entire human being the problem, not the point that we disagree on, but the whole person is the problem. And most people are more than the thing that we disagree with on them, whether it's politics or other things. Most people are parents or siblings or children of somebody. Maybe they go to church. Everybody wants a better life for their kids. We have so much in common, but instead of seeing all the different parts of a person, we see the one thing we don't like and we label the person that.
Yes.
That's such a simple first step, is to realize that you disagree with a point. You don't have to disagree with the whole person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that.
If you've had a friend for a long period of time, you have disagreed 100 times, but you still love them as a person.
Right. Sometimes. I think we have an epidemic of firing people right now. It's like, oh, you stepped on my toes. That's the word I use for when we step on people's toes, and instead of the big blow up thing, it isn't crossing my boundaries. Boundaries can be walls to some degree. We need them. But sometimes we're not going to agree, and that's okay. And how do you make that okay? I think I was telling you before the show that a very wise woman said to me, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I'm against you.
Mm-hmm.
It means I'm me. And we kind of expect everyone's supposed to be just like us. Well, I don't want everybody to be just like me. We'd be a little messed up. We'd have our upside, but we'd also have all this other stuff behind. I feel like we're puzzle pieces. And if we can try to fit together, we're going to make the most beautiful mosaic.
Yes.
But we have to let people be who they are. And who we are is just who we are in the moment. We just have to slow down and realize there's more to people than the moment. And I use even for myself, it's a part of me. A part of me is upset because that person said or did this, but I have a lot of other different parts, and so do we all.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. This is going to, you're going to have to come back, because this is really
I would love to come back.
A conversation that needs to go on and on and on and on.
Well, we need to talk about it in the workplace too, because it works.
Yes.
It works there as well. It's just it's a process that we have to be a little bit aware, not so much how people are impacting us, but how we're impacting them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Two-way street. So let's talk about your book. I love the title.
Yeah. So my book came out of a place, How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. It came out of I was a mediator then, always reflecting on, what I learned in nursing, and actually awed by how it all came full circle. The very first person I saw die, I'm a 19-year-old registered nurse, super young to be a registered nurse. And I'm sitting at her bedside and, she's dying, like at the end of dying. And I picture a book all of a sudden, a book open. And in my head, I'm picturing this book coming together, like closing, right? Her story's ending now. I'm wondering what stories she took with her. Like, what did she love? What did she hate? What secrets does she have that nobody knew about? I just wondered that. And then the next couple of decades, as I was doing nursing, every time I saw somebody die, I saw a story. So I also saw people come in, nobody thinks they're going to end up in an ER when they wake up in the morning. And everybody thinks they're not going to get some disease, like we forget that we're supposed to die. How do we prepare to have our best ending? If our life is a story, can't we write it to end well? And that means legal decisions, healthcare decisions, maybe what kind of celebration of life we want. And I tell a great story about a woman in there who wanted her celebration of life to be while she was still alive, so that she could actually be there when all the people, came to say what a wonderful person she was when she couldn't hear it anymore,
Right.
Leaving our stories, our legacy, our physical story. We have found through research that most people don't want the candlesticks that used to be grandma's. They want to know their past. So our stories is a link between our past and our children's future. I mean, we're the bridge there, and people want to know those. And then finally, to resolve conflicts that are family oriented. I came from a family that I was kind of disowned every 5 minutes. And now in this epidemic of firing people, there's a lot of family estrangement going on. Well, if you fire enough of your family, you're going to die alone. I mean, pardon my bluntness, but it's just true, right? So here we are with a diagnosis and regret, just carrying regret. I think it's fair to want to end your story without regret for the person who's dying and for the people around them. So we have to plan. We have to live in such a way. And then, believe it or not, mediation is a tool to sit in the space of all of those conversations.
Yes. What kind of legacy do you want to see? Every time somebody dies, it is a mess.
That's exactly right. And, we want the doctor to fix everything at the cost of the person being fixed. I mean, it can be torture to go through something when you are ultimately dying. For example, taking an 80-something-year-old person for open heart surgery. Yeah, they might opt for that. That's fair enough. But do they know that in that surgery at that age, what their odds are of living, what might happen if you do this aggressive stuff? Because I do know this, and I don't think anybody in medicine would disagree, that the price of all this wonderful stuff that's making us live longer is that it's taking longer and it's harder to die, which means people are suffering more.
Yes.
I'm
just a bundle of joy, ain't I?
So I just recently
But you made me think. You make me think. You're making people think.
Yeah. It is.
Because we don't talk about this stuff. I say that's the final frontier, that and conflict. We talk about so many things. That's just back when I grew up, so many things you didn't talk about. These two things are death and conflict are huge part of our lives, and we still don't talk about them.
Yes,
we run from them. We act, like you said, as if we're not going to die, as if there's not going to be conflict. We are so busy running from the conflict that we don't give ourselves a chance to say, okay, there's a conflict here. There's a problem. Let's look, let's put it down on the table. Stop waving it around the air. Put it down on the table. And let's dissect this together.
Right.
So that we're not, rather than acting like there's not a conflict until there's, somebody throws a bomb into it.
Right.
It was like, oh, there's a conflict. Now what do we do? Because that's kind of the way it is. Every conflict you see, if you go through history, every war has been about the same thing. We call them today conflicts.
Yeah, whatever. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Like it's no big deal. It's just a conflict. I have a son who graduated West Point who's been in a couple of wars. It breaks my heart. That's part of what drives me to do this. But in sitting down and unpacking this, as you said, with conflict, I just want to throw in that doesn't have anything to do with whose fault it is. Like blame, there's no room for blame. That's another thing about mediation. I'm not looking for who's right and who's wrong. I'm looking for, here's a problem. What do we want our future to look like?
Yes.
I mean, it's even better than how do we solve the problem. It is, what do we want the future to look like?
I like that. That's a more positive approach.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that, Kimberly.
Oh, good. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm going to keep that my little
yes. Well. How do we want the future to look? That made me smile. Because I'm thinking about the future now.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's hard. I mean, when you're in the conflict, you kind of shut down. I mean, you have to step back a minute. You have to calm down a minute. You have to not try not to do any damage in that place when you're feeling triggered, upset. Recognize that that's normal. You don't need to bother yourself with shame for getting upset. Everything about triggers is related to our past. It has nothing to do with what's going on right now anyway. It's something that our brains have in our past. But then it is, recognizing that who's wrong doesn't matter.
Yes.
And I have a friend who decades ago, she said she just got married. She's smart, one of the smartest people I ever met, and hilarious. She said, when I argue with my husband, I always win because I'm better at words, because I'm more assertive. I always win. And one day I realized for me to win, I had to make him lose. And I want to love enough, I don't have to make him lose. So it's the same with right, wrong. If I have to be right, that means I have to make you wrong. We don't think about the impact on somebody. We're so busy wanting to be right. For me to be right, I have to make you wrong. And I want to care enough about you that I don't have to make you wrong. We can do a whole podcast on two truths, which is what that's required.
Yes. This is what I'm hearing. There's so many areas in which mediation is necessary. We need to learn how to do it in our individual one-on-one relationships. We need to learn how to do it in the family. We need to learn how to do it in schools so that teachers and kids are not absolutely wrong. The child isn't wrong. They just have behaviors that we need to understand.
They come from somewhere.
That's right.
I always love and they do it a lot in comedy. The parents show up and the parents are like, my child is perfectly wonderful. Da, 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 da. How could you say this about my child? And it's like, hello. We only have so many hours a day. So they learn this behavior, And again, you're going to be in a situation as a teacher, principal, whatever. The child is not wrong. The parents are not wrong. The teacher's not wrong for calling them on it. How do we go about resolving this?
Yeah, I would like to see conflict curriculum in school. I would like to see kids learn the tools to do that, and their families can learn with them. I mean, we need to come back to community. That's something that would unite us, right?
Yes, absolutely. So how do people get the book?
Oh, the book is on Amazon and your major booksellers have it. I do have a PDF free on my website, Best Conflict Solutions. And the PDF is for book clubs. And I will say that if you have a book club, like I've done it for church groups and stuff before, it's broken down into chapters that you can discuss. And I will, if you email me, I will show up in your group if it's a Zoom group. It came out right before COVID, so everything was Zoom, which was so cool because I could show up for one of the lessons. I love meeting people, hearing their stories, And it just brought me a lot of joy, and folks kind of seem to like having the author, show up in. I mean, I'll do that just because it's fun to do. And I can help have that conversation a little bit with the nursing background and the mediation too. So
yes, because that is so important. That's why we have so many divorces, everything. I mean, that's what we see. It's conflict. We see no resolutions, just conflict.
Right.
Across the globe.
Constantly, every day.
We got to do something about the media. I keep wanting to see a positive media that just shows nothing but the other side of that, because they're taking the worst case and normalizing it. They're making us believe that everything is like that. And all the good that I know gets no attention. I mean, there's community mediation centers that are trying to do this stuff all over the country, all over the world. There's networks of mediators and facilitators and dispute resolution specialists who are, getting paid very little to just help build bridges. And nobody talks about them,
No, they don't. And that's why we do what we will do, because we want that kind of information to come out. We want people to see that there's hope. Everything you see on TV is not all that's happening.
Right. And we can't sit and watch like it's our lives, it's our country, it's our world. What can each of us do? Because I believe it isn't them that's doing things to us. It's they or us. I believe in an us, not them and us. Right. And if we all do something that helps build more positive, more connection, then there will be a difference, because there are more of us than there are the them. Yeah. If that made any sense at all.
It does make sense. Because what I notice when there's things happen in the world, how quickly people come together to help. It's like instantly they coming together to help. And that's all around the world.
Right.
So that
shouldn't take that. Yeah. It shouldn't take a disaster to bring people together.
It shouldn't. We should be able to, every day get along. And if you have a bad day and you lash out at somebody, just say, I'm sorry, and really mean it.
That's right. That's another podcast, because there's a fine art of apology. There's apologies that make things worse and apologies that are sincere and healing.
Absolutely. Yes. Still saying, I'm right, you're wrong.
That's right. I'm sorry you feel that way. Please don't apologize for my feelings.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Kimberly.
Wonderful. Yes. I really do look forward to another conversation with you. Because this is a huge topic and people need to hear about it, and we need to embrace it individually.
Yes. So if people want to connect with you, how do they do so?
Kimberly, Best in Conflict. My company is Best Conflict Solutions, which is, it either sounds like I have a really big ego, Best Conflict Solutions, or it's a great last name. So.
You lucked out.
I did. That's a good thing that came out of marriage.
Wow, Kimberly, you are such a delight.
Yes.
So are you all. It has been a joy. This has been the highlight of my day, and it's evening now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we can't wait to come have you back so we can talk some more.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.